Hello viewers, my name is Sydney Winston. I'm an atheist activist out of Vancouver, Canada. But today it has nothing to do with atheism. Today it is about a country in crisis. The country of my birth, the country where I spent the first 20 years of my life living under a white Dutch Reformed Church police state. In 1994 that all changed. The white government was run out of town, and democracy took hold, and the black majority, of course, was now in control. That was about a quarter of a century ago, and one would have thought that South Africa would have prospered beyond belief, considering the number of resources that it has, considering the talent pool that it has, and considering the attraction of tourism to probably one of the most incredibly beautiful parts of the whole world. There's not much else I can actually say about what is transpiring in South Africa, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to let the video clips that I'm going to present to you in just a second speak for themselves, because I think they do. And as soon as I get this all figured, there we go. All right, so what I'm going to do without further ado is I'm going to get into it. There are a number of clips, mostly short ones, to show you what's going on there. And I tell you something, it's disgusting. It just proves that black lives don't matter. Essentially, what's happening in South Africa, in a nutshell, okay? An ex-president, a Zulu by the name of Jacob Zuma, while he was president for a number of years, he looted the treasury. He gave ministerial and authoritative positions to members, to his friends, to his family, to his supporters, and they all took the money and ran. The treasury of South Africa was left bare. Because of his crime of looting the treasury, Jacob Zuma, ex-president, Zulu, was sentenced to imprisonment. This sentence, or not the sentence itself, but the fact that he was actually incarcerated, has unleashed a tsunami of Zulu hatred against everybody who's not Zulu. That includes white people, that includes Sutus and Xhosas and Tswanis and Swazis and you name it, every single one of the other tribes. And I'm going to show you what happens when the Zulu gets pissed off. And let's do it. Here we go. Looting, rioting, destruction of property is what you'll see. I did. Oh.
The other thing I like about...
Come on with these damn things. With these damn ads.
StreamYard is that if there's ever a glitch in your internet connection...
Yeah, well, there's a glitch right now with that ad.
Thus far, in terms of the problems which we have for looting, we're having a total of 586 arrests. I must indicate that this 586 arrests also includes our own, which is 2 police officials. Those police officials were arrested in Nockham Park as of yesterday. And we are sending the message to members of the South African Police Service that we are here to ensure that the community out there, they are and feel safe. So we can have our own, those who are involved in assisting the criminals in terms of stealing. We have just to flag that we still have those challenges in terms of the flashpoints, as you have seen the mum's mall here around here.
Josef. Sit down, Baba. Sit down.
Look at that one woman. She's got a baby strapped to her back while she's looting.
Everyone feels like saving. It just makes sense, you know?
I think we're going to have to make do with these ridiculous ads.
My brothers and sisters, a request asking us, with what's happening between the Zulus and the Indians, that with immediate effect it must come to an end. our Indian brothers, our closest neighbors, and we have the second biggest population of Indians in KwaZulu-Natal outside of.
Okay, so in KZN or KwaZulu-Natal, there are, of course, a Zulu majority of the black population, but there's also Indians, like from India, who and there are, there's a massive population of Indians who originally came from India, of course, and there is friction or hatred, I should say, between the two groups. Neither of them are white. One is Zulu, one is brown. So that's what this guy is addressing.
Of India. And through that, we have met certain people who have come to us to say thank you to the Zulu people and the Zulu royal family, that you are living with our brothers, our Indian brothers, in peace. So I appeal to everyone that we embrace the Indians.
Look at the stress on his face.
Because we share our land with the Indians. And through that, I appeal for peace, and I want to thank you.
I don't know if it's going to go anything further. It's not from the king. The king wished to apologize because he didn't have his reading glasses. In fact, I tried to indicate to one of his aides this way because I could see that he would have problems in reading his message without his glasses. Bye.
The long arm of the law out of reach, property owners watching helplessly as groups of looters help themselves. Soweto businessman Mike Nkuna says he was compelled to step in when he noticed plans by some looters to burn down his mall.
I was there 5:30, and 6:30 I was in Protea Glen. I averted, a situation whereby, they wanted to ban, routes. And fortunately, when we phoned, the fire extinguisher, they were on time, and, at least that whole center could have been burned down.
Nkuna says he didn't expect this to happen in our democracy. His business empire has survived the volatile 1976 uprising. Today, Nkuna can only reminisce over his neighbor's action who fought tooth and nail to protect his filling station against the 1976 protesters.
I remember very well, they never banned a single school. They were banning only those aspects. So all the corner shops that were owned by, the black people, they were able to be protected. But see, if you look at, today's environment, we've got, the democracy which came 1994, and after the democracy.
All right. What he's talking about here is back in 1976, when the 1976 riots occurred, the impetus for me to leave the country, like he says, black businesses were not affected by the rioters at the time because they were rioting against the white government. This time, it's a different story, it seems. Totally different story.
You would have expected that, that mindset of banning and banning and banning, our politicians, our government of the day would have gone to people and say, let's move from the past.
Nguna's Protea Mall is valued at 700 million rand, while his Jabulani Mall is worth an estimated value of 1.4 billion rand. He says the ongoing violent looting points to lack of leadership. He says he now faces a difficult job of convincing fearful tenants to bring back their business to Soweto. A difficult job that he cannot carry out alone.
It's a will of us to go and sit with those investors to remain and say this place is still good for investment, because the turnovers that we're doing in those areas, they are quite high. But you see, we cannot do it alone. You need the will and the determination of government. And if government doesn't come to us and say, how do we move forward? How do we assist in bringing back those jobs? If I can tell you, take Jabulani Mall only. The people that were working there on a permanent basis, they are more than 5,000 to 6,000.
It will take months, if not years, to bring back the Protea Mall to this, its former glory, where the community of Soweto can shop conveniently, a space where many call their place of work. Tsepo Mongwai, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Welcome back. ENCA reporter Ronald Masinda is monitoring developments on the N2 in Durban on the ongoing looting and violence. Let's cross over to him now for an update. Ronald, we've just been speaking to Dasan Thatia, who is in Phoenix. He's saying that the deployment of the SANDF and SAPS has managed to quell unrest there. Tell us exactly where you are and what the situation is at this hour.
Good evening, Andy. Well, nothing much has changed in the area where we were earlier on. There's actually looting taking place where we are, where a factory near the Queen Nandi Drive in ransacked. We spoke to several people. Here we're also hearing shots fired. We don't know at this stage whether or not where these shots are coming from. But what we do know is that a lot of people have come to this area. We're going to move slightly, Andy, because we can't see in the dark as to who is firing at this stage. But we do know that private security has also come here to try and monitor the situation. We are seeing quite a number of private also moving towards this area. But in the background, we also see a lot of fire and the people setting the area alight. So there's a lot of fire in and around the factories here. We are also making their way up where the factory is at the moment. But a lot of chaos, which is in contrast quite a different story to tell from the ones that we've been hearing from the provincial government. Sisha Zikalala saying that the situation will be calm. He said that many people who've been looting will be reprimanded. But at this stage, this is a totally different story from what we've been told earlier on.
Ronald, Queen Nandi Drive and the factories located there have been a focus area. We've seen attacks on factories and warehouse facilities there over the past 2 nights. Surprising that there has not been a large deployment to that area to contain the unrest and to stop the looting. Why do you think that hasn't happened yet?
Well, it's serious cause for concern because early in the day, we also spoke to the Community Safety MEC, who says that there will be contingency plans in all what has been placed near Queen Nandi Drive. We also learned that there were several dead bodies found underneath a bridge near Queen Nandi Drive. So it's not only just the looting, but also ugly protests between a lot of the people involved within the looting, some fighting over who needs to take whatever they want, and that has also a number of vehicles that were gutted. In fact, even now, Andy, as we speak, there is a factory across the road that is also satellite. So total kind of and here we are still seeing quite a number of people in the background looting and taking whatever belongs they can get their hands on. We've seen quite a number of people taking food items as well as items such as baby nappies. So as you probably can see, I'm trying my best to, give the viewers an angle to just show what is actually taking place in the background. People going up and down from this actual area and continuing to ransack some of the factories that are near along the N2.
Thank you very much, Ronald Masinda, for that update on Queen Nandi Drive. Take care and stay safe out there, Ronald.
A state of emergency, it's a last resort to bring back order when lawlessness has taken a grip. After days of looting, over 70 people dead and billions of rands in damage. Are we there yet? It's ultimately a decision for the president to make, and while our constitution does allow for it, it has strict conditions. Let's discuss what it would mean in a democratic South Africa. I'm joined now by human rights lawyer, advocate Howard Varney. Howard, thank you so much for joining us. Most South Africans who can remember apartheid remember a state of emergency and the horror that it brought. What does a state of emergency entail in a democratic South Africa?
Good evening, and good evening to your viewers. It is indeed quite a tragic state of affairs that post-apartheid South Africa is now considering declaring a state of emergency. And yes, it is something that we all thought would have been unthinkable in a democratic South Africa, but I think the scenes that we've all witnessed over the past few days are pushing us to at least consider that possibility. A state of emergency in modern South Africa would be governed by Section 37 of the Constitution. It would be a somewhat different state of emergency than we saw under apartheid. There would be considerable checks and balances. Individuals would have rights guaranteed under law. Courts would be able to consider and rule in relation to each and every action taken under a state of emergency. But I do think that we have to really think about the existing disaster regulations, because many are saying, well, simply let's use those. And what I want to put on the table, Sally, is those regulations were designed to deal with a public health crisis, to combat the virus. I think we have to ask, should we be using a public health set of regulations to deal with the carnage and the lawlessness that we witnessed over the past few days? And I think we have to consider that question very carefully.
Yeah, because I think you've made the point to me that actually there's a lot more transparency around a state of emergency as it is in our Constitution than where we are with our Disaster Management Act. As you say, that's about a pandemic. We're also hearing a new phrase coming in this evening, and it was put on the table that the President can declare a state of national defence. How would that differ to a state of emergency? Does the state of national defence, would that fall under the Disaster Management Act?
So that in fact would be governed by Section 203 of the Constitution, read with the Defence Act. And it wouldn't in fact be a state of emergency. There would be no suspension of any civil liberties whatsoever. But the Constitution does give the President the power to declare a state of national defence when he is of the view that the army does need to be mobilised. And of course, this could be for purposes of defending the Republic from outside forces and possibly from internal forces as well. But it would not be a state of emergency. It wouldn't be a declaration of martial law either. So that certainly is a possibility. And I think many South Africans are wishing to see many more boots on the ground. They need to see some visibility. And for those in vulnerable areas where they have yet to see police and army, and they've seen terrible destruction and their livelihoods going up in smoke, they have a right to see boots on the ground. And frankly, whether this is done through a state of emergency, a state of national defence, or even targeted regulations under the Disaster Management Act, I suppose it doesn't really matter. The question is, we need a tailored approach to this crisis. And under the Disaster Management Act, using regulations designed to curtail a virus from spreading is simply not the way to go. And a lot of people, I think, are losing confidence in the approach. So we do need an approach that sees an adjustment in the legal framework as well as implementation on the ground.
Let's go back to KwaZulu-Natal, and I'm joined by our reporter, Dessen Thathia, who brings us the very latest. Dessen, good evening to you. Can you tell us where you are and whether you are getting a sense that the looting is at a turning point now?
Sal, I'm sure you're surprised by the quiet around me for a change compared to the activity that we've been seeing over the past few days, especially with the looting that's been taking place in KwaZulu-Natal. But let me explain why that is. I'm in Phoenix tonight, and this is where there were reports earlier of a confrontation between two communities that live side by side. So it's very interesting. There's a road that splits right behind me here. On the one side is a dirt road, on the other side is a tarred road, and it also is the dividing line between two communities. One is Zwelisha and the other is Phoenix, where I am now. And over the past few days, there have been racial tensions that have been brewing here. It has resulted in confrontations between both communities, and you would understand that each one of them has their side and their version. We have taken the time to go into both these communities to engage and find out exactly what's wrong. Whatever those issues are, and I'll unpack them in a second, it's resulted in an estimated 15 people that have been killed in this community over the past few days. And it's an untenable situation. Residents here have been complaining about the violence in the community that we've just come from. They claim that they have not been able to cross through Phoenix. But all of this, at the heart of it, is when these riots started. And at that time, these roadblocks were set up. Now, I've been showing you quite a bit of that over the past few days, where communities have set up roadblocks on various roads in their areas. And they've done this to ensure that they know who is coming in and whether they are coming in with any items that were stolen. So in some cases, that has been done well, and it's been done to good effect because it's resulted in stolen cars being found as well as goods. But in some cases, it seems that it's also gotten out of hand as tensions are very high. So there is a back and forth. There needs to be some kind of intervention here, because I can tell you that although it's very quiet here, it's still very ominous, because both groups are not completely happy with what has transpired so far over the past few days.
And you know, Dessen, it's such an interesting point you raise, because it seems that what has happened with the looting has just shaken everybody and created fissures and tensions and a sense of instability. We're hearing this evening that the Defence Minister wants 25,000 troops on the ground. There's talk of a possible state of emergency, a state of national defence. There's concern about food and fuel coming to these communities. All of these, those issues can cause riots on their own. And I'm wondering if this is over yet. If even when the last looter leaves the last bag of rice behind, is it going to be over? Or are we going to see shockwaves around food security and tensions between communities, as you are explaining? What is your sense, having been on the ground all these days?
Well, the sense that I'm getting, Sally, is that it's certainly not going to be over when the last of those items is taken out. I mean, there's very little that's left to loot here. Yes, we are seeing new cases that are popping up. Some of it was even happening when government leaders were out and about today, many, many days after this started. But despite that, it seems to be the hangover, as I called it before, that's going to be the problem. That is going to be the issue here, because long after the looting stops, and whether there is illegal goods that's transported through this community or not, as well as other communities, the issues between neighbours is still going to persist here, and that's also going to cause problems in how these communities engage with themselves. You spoke about fuel, you spoke about food. Sal, if you take a drive around Durban today, there's still nowhere that you can possibly go and guarantee that you can get a loaf of bread or even get fuel in your car. As we're driving around now, we have a quarter tank left. We're not even sure if there are any fuel stations that are opened. It'll take a long time for these, for factories to be rebuilt, for items to be restocked. But it's certainly caused a division, and there's a divide that's been left in the community, and that is what is going to take a long time to heal. There's only one way that can happen, and that's with some kind of leadership that needs to be shown. It's more than walkabouts, it's more than the PR that we are seeing. There has to be the will to get it right and to resolve this problem far beyond the looting that we've seen, so.
Now to KwaZulu-Natal, the army has touched down in Mobeni, southwest of Durban. Earlier, the looting appeared to be out of control, but the army was able to disperse the looters. Senior reporter Dassen Tatia is on the ground. Dassen, I'm sure you've seen your absolute fill of action in the last couple of days. Give us a sense of whether there is indeed calm on the ground in Mobeni, where you are this evening.
Well, Andy, we are in Phoenix now, and that's where the army has also been deployed. I can tell you that the mood is slightly different. Just take a look behind me. That's the army vehicle that was deployed to the area here. Now, they are also surrounded by Metro Police and SAPS vehicles. We can take you a little closer to to where that vehicle is parked and where these members have been deployed. It's interesting to see them being led, rather this convoy being led by the army vehicle and having these other police vehicles around. And that also speaks to the fact that the SANDF is here in its capacity to support the SAPS's efforts in fighting crime during this time, or this unprecedented time. What was really inspiring, or what brought happiness, I think, to some of the residents was seeing this presence here, and they expressed that through the clapping that we saw earlier as this vehicle drove through with its members. So it's all about visible policing now. That's the good news for this community. The bad news is that we've been told.
All right, just for your information, this reporter mentioned SANDF and SAPS. SANDF is the army, which is South African National Defense, and SAPS is the South African Police Service. And of course, there's also Metro Police that he mentioned. So just to fill you in.
That at least 15 people have been killed here. Those numbers are still to be confirmed by the official police sources, but that's what the community is telling us. At least 15 people have been killed here in vigilante attacks. Now, this stems from, over the past few days, we've been seeing mass looting taking place at various stores. Community members here had then set up these roadblocks, and they had accused some that have been coming through of stealing items. Things had escalated, vehicles were burnt, bodies were lying in the streets of Phoenix. We witnessed that for ourselves over the past few days here. And since then, it's also developed into something of a racial war between the Phoenix community as well as the Zulu community, which is nearby. Both communities claim that the other is wrong. We have spoken to both of them. The Zulu community tells us that they are being victimized by the Phoenix community just purely on the basis of being black. The Phoenix community says that they are using this area as a way to transport their looted goods, and they won't have that. That's why they've set up these roadblocks. So hopefully now, after things came to a head today and both of those communities clashed earlier on, there was a shootout in the area. Hopefully now, with the visible policing that we are seeing, the deployment of the SANDF with its vehicle here patrolling the streets, as well as the members here, hopefully there will be some peace for residents in both those communities tonight. But that won't be the end of it, Andy. There have to be conversations that need to be had. There has to be leadership that has to be shown here, because even beyond this looting spree and beyond what we are seeing now, these tensions still remain, even though there is now, as I speak to you, more of a sense of calm in this area.
Tessin, the racial tensions between the Indian community, not only in Phoenix but in the greater KwaZulu-Natal and Zulu community members, has even made it into a speech by the new Zulu king. He urged members of both sides to work together, denied that there was victimization on either part. However, you have also been targeted by members of the Phoenix community on social media, saying there was not enough coverage throughout the day, that there was intensified looting, that there was no support from the SANDF or SAPS. Do you think that all of this attention on this one area is the reason why we can now see additional support, the SANDF vehicle behind you, numerous SAPS vehicles now focusing their attentions on Phoenix, or is that same attention being spread to other areas of KZN as well?
I think the dynamics are different in various areas, Andy. I mean, in this one, the racial tension started very early. In fact, it was one of the first places in which we saw that developing, and that was when the first of these roadblocks, and how we saw how violent that can be and how it can go wrong with vigilantism. It's one of those cases where when you come in and you talk to people and you ask them what happened, how was their body that's now suddenly lying on the roadside, and they'll tell you that they don't know. Yet there were many community members that saw what happened. This is certainly what happened there. The social media videos showing cars being stopped, showing people brandishing weapons, all of that has attracted the attention of the SAPS. And as I mentioned, it's good to see this kind of presence here, because you'll remember that over the past few days we've been reporting that there hasn't been as much police presence as communities would have liked to have seen. They were feeling unsafe. They felt that they had been left to their own devices, which was one of the reasons why it ended up with these types of street committees being formed, which is why these roadblocks had been held, which is why even police that were driving past were turning a blind eye to communities stopping and checking where people were going. I mean, that's restricting our freedom of movement, but I imagine that there was no choice. There was, at this point where there was no other way of stopping the looting that was going on, and police knowing that their resources were limited, it was one of those things that they just realized they had to kind of turn a blind eye to. We saw that firsthand. So with that, against that backdrop, it's good now, excuse me, especially after finally seeing leaders come to the streets much later. Finally, after all that, we're noticing now more of a support from the police as well as the SANDF.
Tessin, can you tell us whether there has been any unrest, looting, violence, burning, shootings in the area where you currently are within the last couple of hours, or has that pretty much been quelled by the presence of the SANDF and the SAPS?
Well, we haven't heard reports of looting, Andy, but we have heard reports of shooting. And that was what I described to you earlier between the two communities. And I was talking to Sally earlier, and I was explaining to her how, if you excuse me, these fumes from this truck are getting to me, if you allow me just to take a step away. There was a road that separates these two communities. One was a dirt road, and the other was a tar road. And that's where things came to a head. Police had to intervene, one community accusing the other community. Shots were fired. I was told that at least one man was shot in the leg during that confrontation between those communities. So it's turned to that. It seems to have moved beyond the looting that we saw over the past days, which was what had started this type of vigilantism in the area. So, you know, in having these discussions, Anli, you would have picked up that there are so many different angles to this story beyond just the obvious and beyond what we are taking at face value, and that's the complete lawlessness.
The two communities that he's talking about, one community is black people, and the other community on the other side of the road is Indian. And there's obviously racial tension and between them, and if I may say so, there is and always has been the hatred between races in South Africa. They don't get along. Nobody gets along. if you think it's a black versus white situation, you'd be wrong. When I was growing up there, I remember, like waiting at a bus stop or something, I remember how they talk to each other. I just listened to them, and I remember one incident where this black guy, when I say black, I mean like native Indian. In South Africa, there's the black communities, the Zulus, the Xhosas, the this, the, you know. Okay, they're one. We can all package them into one for this for the purposes of this conversation. And then there's colored people, which is the mixture, black and white. And then there's the white, and then there's English-speaking whites, and then there's the Afrikaans-speaking whites. I am from the English-speaking white side. Everybody hates everybody. It's don't think that you know, it's the blacks versus whites. The whites in this particular case have nothing to do with the situation. Nothing. The government is black. The president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, is proving to be a huge failure in leading his country through this nonsense. I don't know what the ramifications are going to be for him, but it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for anyone right now.
The looting and the violence, there are also these other repercussions, and those will come to the fore once all of the so-called action subsides.
Thank you very much, senior reporter Dasan Thatia in Phoenix for us this evening, moving around, tracking the movements not only of the SAPS and the SANDF deployed in KZN, but also of looter and unrest occurring there.
I suppose there are no simple ways of understanding some of what we've been watching unfold before our eyes over the last couple of days. For now, though, we'll try to make sense of the situation, bringing the latest from the ground in terms of the looting that continues largely unabated in KwaZulu-Natal. Police in Lamontville are struggling to bring order after a Bidvest warehouse was looted. Some have made off with bulk goods. For more on the latest, let's take you to our reporter, Pilane Pagadi, who's on the scene there for us tonight. Pilane, it's been unbelievable watching some of those scenes this afternoon, and part of the difficulty becomes that we have known what has been happening for a number of days. The assumption would be that the law enforcement officers by now would be able to preempt where they needed to beef up their presence. That's not happening.
That is definitely not happening, Kathy. As a matter of fact, we, as the media, seems to even find these places where people are looting first before the police do. And we don't even get any kind of calls where they say they are busy looting at Lamontville. So we'll be driving around and this is what we'll find. But of course, as you were rightly putting it, the police here trying to put some law and order, and this truck was here to get, of course, some loot in the area. And if you see the number of vehicle lights going all the way back, these are vehicles that were in the area to try and loot. So the police now have seemingly managed to get people to start moving from inside the warehouse. They are coming through with the police here trying to bring about some order, and in their hundreds, and they have been working out since we began speaking with Stephen Krutis. They have been working out in their numbers, while some of them were relentless and did not even want to move from their loot. So the police currently searching all the vehicles that are leaving here. It's quite a traffic. It reminds me of the N1 traffic all the way to Polokwane during the Easter. So this is quite a traffic, quite a number of vehicles that are coming through, and some of them seemingly with the loot that they may have successfully been able to load, Kathy, and the police currently checking if there's any loot before they let people go.
Philani, let's talk a little bit about this area. What do we know about Lamontville? What do we know about some of these people that today have come out in their hundreds, by the looks of it, to be part of those that are able to get whatever they can from these warehouses?
Let's take it from the people of whom we've been talking to. They were telling us that it so seems that poverty is the reason why they are here in the first place trying to loot. Nobody had invited them to come and loot the warehouse. The area in itself seems like a location to me when we were driving around. On the other side, there were quite a number of people who were also trying to protect their private properties as we were driving in here. But this area in itself, as far as we know and we are told, is that there is statistics of high unemployment, and then that in itself is what the people were telling us through the vox pops that we got here on Newsroom Africa, telling us that they were hungry, it is poverty, and they came here to get what they can, and because they do not have money to purchase the basics. And one of the other points I think it is important to put through, Kathy, is that one person who we talked to was telling us that they had tried their level best really to ensure that they avoid looting, but they found themselves in this area simply because there are no shops anywhere to buy anything. So the issue is around buying. There is no shops because all shops are looted, and they want to come through and take the basics.
Sorry, Philani, I didn't mean to laugh there, but I'm seeing the gentleman in the bakkie who's getting rid of the items that were packed in his vehicle, obviously aware of the fact that the road block effectively a little bit further up the road will prevent him from getting through, and that's what some other people also seem to be doing tonight.
Definitely, and they were still in here despite the fact that the police have been here for more than an hour trying to ask people to disperse and go back to their homes, and unfortunately, as you see, the police have been able to stop them from leaving with the loot that they have here. So they are trying to get rid of all the things that they've loaded to try and as well to get through the roadblock, because the police there are not letting anyone go if they have things that they cannot account for in the vehicle. So in itself, it gives you, of course, that sense that the people were still hopeful that the police will just come, shoot rubber bullets and tell them to leave, and whoever who lives with vehicles, they can leave with whatever that they may have loaded already. But in this instance, the police currently are here, and we haven't seen any side of the SNDF in full might. We've seen a helicopter a little bit earlier on, but that's about what we saw here to try and bring about law and order. But yes, quite a number of police vehicles, about 4 police nyalas that we've seen and 2 soft tops that we've seen. So in that regard, yes, but anyhow, Katie, as a wrap up from this side, this is the loot that remains outside. People have packed and we're waiting for transportation to leave with all these packs that you see in front of your eyes currently. So they were packed and just waiting for transportation. People have been looting relentlessly since the beginning of the morning, and they were able to steal from inside the Bidvest Logistics and come here while they pack here and wait for their transport. Many have been successful, and the late ones who came after 3 o'clock seemingly now forced to leave all this packs that they were waiting transport for here. Kathy?
Just before I let you go, one of the questions that we've been grappling with is what is leading to these protests, who is driving these protests. It's just some of the questions that we've been asking. As far as you can tell, from the community in Nearbank, Was there anyone specific, was there any group specifically that had coordinated this to say, at such a particular time, we are all going to the Bidvest warehouse? Is that what happened?
Well, that question nobody seems to be interested to answer, Kathy. We were talking to two elderly women a little bit earlier on with SG, and they were telling me that they were passing by. They saw the logistic warehouse already forced open and people looting, and then they also began to take what they thought they may get away with. So, in this regard, that question as to who really may have been coordinating, if there is a coordinator, it's still a mystery at this kind of stage. But we do know that from the State Security Minister that there are already 12 people that are said to be suspects. They are working on it, and among the reasons was that it seems like the loot were coordinated. Well, that's what we hear from government, and then the investigations are underway. But from here on the streets, no, we have not heard anything like we heard from Jabulani Mall, Maponya Mall, actually last night when Zianda Ngoba, our colleague, was talking to one gentleman who revealed Tulani was part of the people who were looking to coordinate all the loot in the Soweto area. So yes, Kathy, currently, we have not heard if there's any one person or groups who have been coordinating these loots in the KZN area as formal as yet.
All right, Pilani Pakadi out in Merebank. Those are the scenes then of different consumables, perishables that are lying in the streets this afternoon following what was a break, effectively the ability to break into the infrastructure at Bidvest, one of the Bidvest factories, and people then coming in and taking some of what was in that particular warehouse.
Professor Anthony Turton from the University of the Free State Centre for Environmental Management joins me now to discuss this, along with the measures put in place by government to deal with these issues. Good evening, Professor Turton. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. I'm speaking to you after having seen a post on social media by yourself explaining your views on what's taken place over the past couple of days. And I want to get your views on some of the issues that you point out in that post. A lot of leadership has in the past day said that, you know, they had no idea, there was no warning, that's why the deployment has taken so long, why the response has perhaps been wanting. Yet you speak of very clear warning signs. How were you able to discern that there was trouble brewing, yet our leaders weren't?
Well, yes, with the benefit of the 2020 vision of hindsight, one can always be correct. However, looking back at the track record up until now, there's been a clear trail of evidence suggesting that this is coming. And I'll go to the immediate past, as in the last weekend before the Monday morning of violence. There were posters that were doing the rounds. In fact, I put one on my Facebook page that I'd received, and there were a lot of voice notes that were very precise, that on Monday morning this is going to happen, and it was very precise about white businesses were to be targeted. The whole thing was couched in very inflammatory racial rhetoric, blaming white monopoly capital and instructing a mass uprising against white monopoly capital. So that came out the weekend before the rioting. But the build-up to that before, months in advance, in fact, even years in advance, there's been a systematic looting of trucks. I live in the Port Shepstone area, and I've reported on trucks that are regularly looted as they come through the logistical routes on their way to the different supermarkets. I recently posted on my Facebook page a video that somebody took of a truck full of baked beans that had been looted in the full presence of the police. The police were standing there. They were seen on the video and not doing anything. So the looting of trucks also goes back to the xenophobic violence. You'll recall along the N3 highway, there's been outbreaks of trucking violence for a long time. And in fact, you speak to anybody in the trucking industry, And they will tell you that they've even established a very, very sophisticated network of almost intelligence flow of information about where the hotspots are, because trucking has been attacked for a long period of time. So there's certainly, from an intelligence perspective, I'm a former intelligence officer, so I'm familiar with the processes and the procedures involved. It's very, very easy to actually draw a trajectory through this and to start projecting into the future that this type of thing is increasingly likely. Of course, it's difficult to pinpoint it down to a specific day, but with those posts that came out this last weekend, then it was quite possible to come out as a threat. And I called it at that point in time in public, I called it a credible threat. As many people told me it was not credible. I believe that from a national security perspective, you always deem a threat to be credible unless it's proven otherwise. So that was my default position, and I took the public position at that point in time. In fact, over the weekend, I took the public position that there's going to be a revolutionary uprising on Monday.
Very glaringly obvious over the weekend and on Monday was the absence of leadership in terms of SAPS. We did not see the man in the hat, as you refer to him, on TV. He's usually quite visibly present. We do many interviews with Police Minister Bheki Cele on a regular basis. However, we didn't see him on the weekend. We didn't have interviews with him on Monday. We did see him out and about today, though. Why do you think there was this period of time where he was completely absent from coverage of events? He didn't speak out at all about what was going on and how it was being tackled?
Well, I'm not being unnecessarily critical here. I'm being purely an analytical person. I'm looking at the facts before me. And the facts before me are that for at least a 48-hour period, government was entirely invisible. And I would go even further than that and saying, based on personal empirical evidence, seeing it with my own eyes, the government has left a vacuum, certainly in the parts of KZN that I've got personal access to. I live in KZN. And certainly there's been a complete, absolute vacuum of government, to the extent that we've now seen local militia that have been established spontaneously, and they fill the vacuum left by the state. Having said that, I noticed that today the SANDF has in fact deployed, and I also note that where the police have been allowed to continue, they've done an exceptionally good job. And there is in fact one incident where the local police ran out of ammunition, and one of these private initiatives supplied ammunition to the police, and that speaks to a supply chain management, planning, anticipation, intelligence-led intervention beforehand. So I think these are all lessons that should be learned, and I don't think we must be too harsh on ourselves in terms of apportioning blame. That can happen a long time in the future. I think right now we have to just understand that mistakes were made, but in the meantime we've got a pressing problem that we need to deal with, and we need cool, calm heads to come together and to actually plot a way forward, because there's at least 4 or 5 critical things that I think are happening in the near-term future that require immediate, clear thinking in terms of planning.
What are those 3 or 4 things, or 4 or 5 things?
Well, I think there are a couple of things. I'm an abstract thinker. I'm a strategic person, and so I think in the strategic realm. And the first thing that I see is that the immediate short-term food shortages, without any question of doubt. My personal household, I have bread and milk for tomorrow, and then I have no more food in my household. But I'm just speaking on behalf of a community. The whole community is pretty much in that. So short-term food shortages are a serious problem. Diesel, fuel in general. The fuel has run out here in KZN in large parts, and the Natref refinery has been forced to declare force majeure because they can't get critical elements of their production process. So you're going to see a fuel shortage, increasingly expanding, which leads to the third thing, and that is this has been about supply chain breakdown, a fundamental supply chain breakdown, which is going to take months, if not years, to repair. So spare parts for machinery, medication, people on chronic medication. I know of people that have got medication, chronic medication, for the next 4 or 5 days. Then they're going to run out. Then they're going to possibly need hospitalization. Okay. Then, of course, we get to another critical issue because the point of payment machines have been trashed within the supermarkets. even if they could get restocked tomorrow, they can't transact because they can't accept card money. So cash is going to start running dry because your ATMs have been so severely vandalized. So these are the immediate problems that I see that are going to require significant attention. And then, of course, the final thing is that what we've actually had is a super spreader event. People have lost all sense of social distancing. There's been a violent engagement between people. So I would predict that in the next 10 days, you're going to start seeing a spike in corona cases. And of course, the tragic thing about this event has been that places like Clicks and Dis-Chem and those sort of commercial stores that have been so successful in rolling out the coronavirus vaccine are no longer going to be able to do that in the immediate short term. I've had my first jab in a Click store, and I can't go back to for the second one because I don't know when it's going to happen. So I think that's the whole coronavirus is going to be exacerbated, and we'll see that in the next 10 days. And from a planning perspective, I think that should be anticipated.
Professor Turton, we're running out of time, but I do have to ask you before we let you go. You raised the issue of the emergence of the invigorated moderate middle. You say the time of the incompetent ruling elite is nearly over. What are you predicting politically in terms of our social makeup and our political makeup in South Africa?
Yes, I think for too long we haven't had a moderate middle, and we've had this narrative that's been driven by a liberation movement that, with due respect, has not really been successful in transforming itself into a party of government. So I think that those days are over. I see at a minimum quite a significant crisis of confidence within the ANC. There's actually two ANCs. So which ANC are we talking about now? Is it the law-abiding ANC, the rule of law ANC, or is it the one that's simply a criminal syndicate looting the coffers of state that's now been reflected down at grassroots level? So I see a serious crisis within the ANC, and ultimately the ANC is at a binary choice crossroad as far as I'm concerned. They either have to make a decision that they go the rule of law route, which means they have to start prosecuting internally people that are guilty of gross crimes and misappropriation of funds, in which case they emerge invigorated, or on the other hand, they don't do that, and then they're going to lose the moral high ground. They're going to lose legitimacy, which then is going to give rise to this new emerging moderate middle that is free of the vestiges of the past and united across race, color, class lines, etc., but united by a common vision of what it means to be South African under current circumstances in a damaged economy, high levels of joblessness, 75% of youth unemployed, a lack of foreign direct investment into the country. Is capital a problem, or is capital part of the solution? All of these really complicated issues that have to be dealt with by this emerging moderate middle. So I think that we're going to see that happening, and I'm very optimistic that there's actually a good thing that's taking place in the midst of all of this carnage.
Well, thank you very much for your insights. That was Professor Anthony Turton from the Centre for Environmental Management at the University of the Free State.
I do not like being in a position where I am right about things that I do not want to be right about. But at the moment, it is truly looking like South Africa is at a breaking point. In my documentary Farmlands, I had plenty of people tell me they were terrified of the country descending into civil war, with combined factors of government corruption, racial tensions, and unchecked absurd levels of criminality. I truly wish the people who called me and my film reactionary conspiracy theory nonsense were correct. I wish they were laughing at me right now while everyone in South Africa was singing Kumbaya. But they are not. And in fact, you'll notice that progressive media aren't even touching this. They're not talking about South Africa at all right now, despite the fact that the footage is insane, and that's why, because the footage is so damn conclusive they couldn't counter-signal if they wanted to.
Okay, let's go.
The nation has descended into mass riots and looting with no police controlling the situation and literally just men on the streets with guns fighting mini battles for their shops and neighborhoods. It's like Mad Max out there. But quite frankly, I am not on the ground there right now. And I think having someone on the ground is essential to getting the full story and understanding it. So I've brought someone on to chat with me who is, and he is going to tell us just what the hell is going on in South Africa. Ian Cameron is the founder of firearms.co.za and ambassador for the organization Safe Citizen. Let's jump into the interview. Ian, it is so wonderful to have you here on my channel. Thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Lauren.
Could you please explain for non-South Africans just what is going on in South Africa right now? What has sparked this chaos?
Yeah, so I think it's important to. It's a very important question, just to give some context. First of all, everyone knows that the former president Jacob Zuma he admitted himself to prison last week, and it seemed to start as a little bit of an uprising by Zuma supporters, especially in the KwaZulu-Natal province, that obviously sparked quite a bit of violence. They started protesting, closing roads, etc. The challenge that we although then had, that a lot of people came in after that, a lot of people that have got nothing to do with Zuma or even the ANC for that matter, came in and they started with mass looting. In fact, some supermarkets, some shops, one of the pharmacy groups in South Africa has lost in the past 48 hours over 160 shops that have been looted in the country. Some supermarkets have lost, just in the KwaZulu-Natal province, over 50 retail outlets. One of the biggest supermarket groups in South Africa, just on Sunday evening, lost just over 40 stores, and I can go on. The point I'm trying to make is that it really hit breaking point. And I think the very sad thing for us is that the majority of people in the country are the ones that are silent, are the ones that are left defenseless, and are the ones that have to bear the brunt of not having jobs and becoming even poorer than what they already are.
Wow. So it's like just people jumping in on what started as a political thing and taking advantage of it to commit crime. That's tragic, but happens far too often, even in the States. So what does it look like on the ground, in the streets, in neighborhoods? People are seeing videos all over the place of, what looks like Mad Max, men just in the streets with guns. Can you describe what it is like out there at the moment?
Yeah, so let's take it from the different kinds of communities that you get in South Africa. If you go look at many of the poorer communities, a lot of people have taken to the streets to protect themselves and their properties. In fact, about 5 minutes ago, I saw a video that was sent to me from a township area, a very poor township in the Gauteng province, where a community have taken hands around a shopping mall, saying that looters will not destroy their mall because that is where they need to buy food. That is where many of them live and work. Then in many other communities, people, innocent law-abiding civilians, have gone as far as taking up arms because the police are outnumbered, under-resourced, not trained well enough, and obviously lack the leadership to really step up. And it's come to the point where criminals that were looting and that were putting people's lives in danger were shot and killed in the past day or so. So it really is a dire situation. If we look at just today, in the last probably 12 hours, the South African National Defence Force have been called in for help. They have sent out just under 3,000 troops on the ground that have moved into especially township areas to try and stabilize things. But I'm afraid it's too little, too late. Right as we speak, the city of Durban in the KwaZulu-Natal province is still facing mass looting action. In fact, I spoke to one of the major retail outlet risk managers earlier today, and they've lost more than 100 million rand in just a few hours, where many of these major supermarket retail outlets have lost their distribution centers. Never mind, or not even mentioning the shops. The actual distribution centers have been cleared out. The South African National Brewery has been looted as well, where it's just, you literally see thousands of people running into a warehouse and just helping themselves. Dunlop, the tire producer, their warehouses were looted, and the list just goes on. But it's a state of absolute chaos. If it wasn't for private security and well-organized communities in this country, I'm sure the violence and the destruction would have been 100 times worse.
Yeah, and I've heard that private security in South Africa is one of the biggest industries in the world, in South Africa, for private security. I really want to reiterate to my audience, a lot will know this already, but some may not. People will look at these videos and be like, why are you out there with guns against people just robbing shops? You have to understand, this isn't like the first world. It's not like Canada or America where it'll just get rebuilt the next day. This is very poor areas where people are relying on this as their only source of food and work and everything. Like, their community will collapse if they lose this infrastructure. And these stores are not going to rebuild in places where they had everything stolen and destroyed there. And speaking of these people out there with guns, I really wanted to ask you about this. Is the average South African armed? How many people are armed and able to defend themselves in that way and their communities in that way?
Well, I think this is the sad thing, that less than 2 million people in South Africa are legal firearm owners. And obviously, we've probably got more than 60 million people in the country, a lot of which, or a lot more, that are illegal immigrants as well, probably pushing us far over that number. But it obviously makes it very difficult, because you've got a small amount of law-abiding armed citizens that are able to step up and say, but we will defend what is ours, and obviously our lives and our families as well. The interesting thing is that there's a perception, obviously often created by the anti-gun lobby, that it's only a certain cultural group or race group that owns guns. And the interesting thing is, in South Africa, it really is a broad spectrum of different cultural groups, different racial groups that bear arms. And obviously, from my side, I encourage everyone, if you are able to legally arm yourself and understand how you as a law-abiding citizen can defend yourself, your family, and your property, you should do so. I think what people in the first world need to understand is that just today, there were tenfold cases where so-called protesters actually fired live ammunition towards community members that were defending their shops or their houses, or trying to keep their streets clear, to the point where community members actually constructed vehicle checkpoints before a certain highway on-ramps or freeway on-ramps and off-ramps, to try and check that looters can't go in and out with vehicles that are either going to be used to load products onto, or used to escape with stolen goods. Some communities have even gone so far as to placing rolls of barbed wire on roads to create roadblocks to stop looters from coming in. And this is the interesting thing. The perception is that this is fueled by hunger, that it's fueled purely by poverty. That's a load of absolute nonsense. I think obviously poverty plays a role in the way that people are desperate. But the main cause of this is a country with absolute lawlessness, absolute corrupt leadership, absolute political cancer that is created by the ANC in this country. And on top of that, the amount of money that has been looted from state coffers by specifically the ruling party, that obviously makes the poor even poorer, causes for people to say, but if my leaders can't behave themselves, why should I do so? If they don't respect the rule of law, why should we do it? And then it becomes a perfect storm where people are utterly desperate. Their moral fiber is very, very low, of a very low standard. And therefore this chain reaction starts, and to the point where we are now, where thousands and thousands of people have had their livelihoods destroyed over a space of less than 72 hours.
Now, where do you think this is going? I mean, obviously there's the short term of just the next few weeks, what's going to happen, and then the long term as well. What is going to be the longer term fallout of this? I know that the government are considering banning guns. I know that they're just giving less ability for the public to defend themselves from this mass crime, but also not upping their own ability to police and keep things under control. So where do you see this going in the short term, and where do you see this going in the long term?
Yeah, well, I think the disarming side, let's talk about the long term first. The disarming side is a battle that's going to carry on for the rest of time in South Africa. As long as the ANC plays any form of governing role in South Africa, we are going to be fighting this whole thing of disarming law-abiding citizens. Just to give you an idea, I actually wrote an article recently. The South African Police Service, just between the years 2005 and 2017, lost just over 26,000 firearms. That means 26,000 firearms are on the streets, probably, and well, obviously, most likely in the hands of criminals. Just after that, probably between about 2013 and 2019, they lost just under 10 million rounds of ammunition, which tells you that criminals are armed to the teeth. Just before that, the ex-cop Chris Prinsloo admitted in court that he helped smuggle just over 9,000 firearms to gangs in the city of Cape Town. So the streets have been flooded by guns that belong to government. If you go look at cash in transit heists, which are very violent, very well organized heists that very often happen in South Africa almost daily, where armed money trucks are bombed and then the money stolen. We very often see that if at all any guns are seized, the firearms that are seized are assault rifles that are all state issued, R1s, R4s, R5s, and so on. So I think it's important to give that as context. The police in South Africa recover less than 7% of firearms that are stolen or lost from them or by them. And this tells you that in actual fact, the South African Police Service, and most likely the South African government, is the biggest provider of illegal firearms to criminals in South Africa. And whether it's because of negligence or a lack of political will to sort problems out, regardless, they are endangering millions of people through their absolute reckless and careless attitude. In terms of the short term, South Africans need to make sure that they organize themselves in their communities. There's ample space within legislation to do that. They need to be able to operate together to safeguard their livelihoods, because the South African government has failed to do so and won't be fixing it anytime soon. The only place in South Africa where there's quite a bright future in terms of provincial government and local government is in the Western Cape province, and the reason for that is it is not governed by the ANC.
It's just, I'm so sorry that you guys are in that situation right now. I mean, losing all of your shops, livelihoods, communities being burnt to the ground right now, and then being fearful that you won't even be able to defend yourselves at some point. That is, I mean, I've always known the future in South Africa has been uncertain, but this is insane. I've been getting messages constantly from people who are just traumatized by what is going on. I did want to finish with just one last question here. This has been a phenomenal interview. I think a lot of people that follow my channel will want to know if there are any updates on a lot of the stuff I covered in my documentary Farmlands, the farm murders, the seizure of land. What's the situation with that right now?
I think it's been overshadowed by a lot of other political issues. You know, COVID-19, the lockdown, double standards by government. You know, we saw that the government last year, when the first lockdown for COVID-19 was announced, deployed over 70,000 troops to the streets of South Africa. And today we see violence all over the country, and they only deployed 2,500 troops for a far more serious situation, in my opinion, in any case. So obviously there's still discussion by it. I see that the EFF which has actually become a bit of a sideshow political party in South Africa, are trying to make themselves relevant at the moment on social media, saying that land was looted many years ago, and you know that specific racial groups have stolen land and all of that nonsense. But it doesn't seem that they are getting any traction. I must say that government's actions in the last probably 18 months have caused for far more people from all creeds and cultures in South Africa to say, but wait a minute, this government is utterly corrupt. All of us are being negatively impacted by it, and we need to unite in some way to stop this. We need to organize ourselves. We need to have some form of resistance. What is very interesting is that in terms of farm attacks, from my experience in any case, and this is my personal opinion, there's a drastic increase, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, of farm workers also being attacked at a higher rate than what they were before. It also seems that attacks have stabilized, which is a terrible thing that we're talking about, stabilizing attacks, because it shouldn't even exist, but that they have stabilized because of communities organizing themselves in a way that they can defend themselves, their families, neighbors, and so forth. So to answer you, Lauren, very shortly, I think the South African Police Service and the South African government has failed already. It is a failed state, and we have started to see the result of that. I think we've got tough times ahead. I know hospitals are overcrowded, and even more so after the last few days because of gunshot wounds and other things. And that with COVID-19 has become a storm in a teacup that is really going to cause serious challenges for us in the future.
You know, I never like to hear that one problem has been overshadowed by even bigger problems, but at least the one positive there is that there is nothing that unites people like a terrible government. And we are all praying for you, my audience, guys. I am just begging you, please pray for these guys in South Africa, for their homes, their communities, their lives at the moment. And Ian, where can people find you and get updates on what's going on?
Yeah, so I would like to encourage people that they can, first of all, in terms of the whole gun right fight in South Africa, they can read more about it on firearms.co.za, or they can visit the Safe Citizen website, which is just safecitizen.co.za. And I think there they will get an overview of what the current situation and how it's affecting people. And then if they want updates on what is happening in South Africa at the moment, they can follow me on Twitter at Ian Cameron 23. If they do that, they'll be able to see the videos, photos, everything as it happens. And we're quite a group of people that's using that platform to make sure that the world out there is informed about what's happening in South Africa. And especially at the moment, I think Twitter is probably the most relevant platform to really get quick news out there.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much for joining me, Ian, and everyone else. Thank you for tuning in. And yeah, I guess we'll just be monitoring the chaos and praying from afar. I'll chat again soon, guys. Bye.
Just wow. Are you depressed yet? Are you thankful that you don't live there? Am I thankful that I don't live there anymore? Oh, yes. Oh, you have no idea. One thing I want to say about Lauren Southern, she really is part of the problem. When she says to everybody out there, please pray for South Africa. What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? When you say, please pray for South Africa, you might as well say, please don't even think about South Africa. Don't do anything, don't say anything, nothing. Because praying is at best ineffective. In fact, I saw a meme yesterday which said something like this, which went something like this. It says 250,000 people on this planet die every day. It's a statistic. 250,000 people die on the planet Earth every day. And then it went on to say that if everybody prayed for the 250,000 people not to die, the result would be 250,000 people dying every day. Same thing with what Lawrence Southern has said. What is the point of saying pray? Say something else, or say nothing. But to say pray is a useless gesture. It's almost one of desperation. What else can I do? What else can I say? What else? Well, just shut up. Wow. I'm not feeling good about this at all. I think this is something that we should follow and keep on top of, but we're talking about people. We're talking about humans. Human beings. Caught up in this craziness. Whew. I tell you, I'm messed up about this. But that's all I got for you for now. I appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. And I think we'll leave the way we came in. Thank you for watching, everybody. Have a great, safe evening.